Hi, welcome to Keep Homestead.
Today we're working on pantry shelving. We are turning this bare wall into pantry shelves.
For this technique, we need to cut a notch in our front and back 2x4s out of the thickness of our plywood. Here we are setting the depth of the saw to match the plywood. We are also setting the width of the cut to the same thickness. When you set the width, measure from the side of the blade opposite of the guide, or you'll end up with a cut that is too wide. We are using a small scrap piece that is the same thickness as our sheeting. After our saw is set, cut a piece of scrap wood to check the fit. Check the fit using the scrap plywood and the 2x4 to make sure they're even. After we are satisfied with the fit, we are going to cut the notch in all of our front and back pieces. Make sure to have a narrow pusher handy to clear the small strip of wood that is left behind. Once the notches are cut, put two boards notch to notch and measure the gap. Ours came out to 7/8 of an inch, and we're using 24-inch sheeting, so we know to cut our cross runners at 23 1/8 inches. Here we cut the cross runners. We are using 2x3s to keep them from being lower than the front and back pieces. Next, we are going to rip our sheeting down to 24 inches, which is always easier with a helping hand. You can see here I didn't mind my cord and had to get bailed out by my wife. Here we are having Ethan mark out our 24-inch centers on the front and back board. You could vary your spacing depending on how much weight you are planning on putting on each shelf. Next step is assembly. We are using the plywood spacers again to align the cross runners with the front and back pieces. A spacer is needed under both ends of the cross runner to keep it square. Make sure that the front and back board is all the way down on the spacer or the alignment will be off. We used 3-inch screws for this step, but nails would also work. Due to some ductwork, we have a shorter shelf at the top. This goes together the same way as the 8-foot shelves, with one fewer cross runner. Now we are going to mark out our studs so that we can align and level our shelves quicker during the installation. We also marked out 3 2x4s with the same spacing that will be bolted to the front of the shelves for support. Here Ethan is reading off to me the correct measurements for the spacing. We go back with a square to each mark to make a more distinguishable line. After we get our first shelf screwed in, we attach 2 of the support boards to the front of the shelf. Here, Eli is helping me to make sure the board is plumb. We place the second shelf in, align it, and fasten it in with a couple screws. After it's held in place, we secure the back to the studs using power legs, which are a replacement for leg bolt. They go in quickly, don't require pre-drilling, and hold strong. We bolt the front with 3/8 inch leg bolts. We wait till the last full shelf frame is in to put the last vertical 2x4 in place. We measure out our spacing, in this case a few inches over 4 feet, so that we have clearance on the back of the front board for the bolts. We hold the board in place before plumbing it and fastening it with a few screws. After it is temporarily fastened, we go back and fasten it with leg bolts. We slide the plywood in from the end and fasten it down with screws. We used 1 1/4 inch screws because that's what we had on hand, but I would have liked to have used 1 5/8 inch or bigger. We put 2 screws into each cross runner, a few inches from each end to avoid hitting the screws that held the front and back boards to the cross runner. While we were fastening the plywood in, we realized how much easier it would have been to install the plywood on each frame before putting the next frame on top of it. It would have also helped to mark the location of the cross runners on the top of the backboard also to help with more accurate screwing. A few pieces of the plywood were tight fits, and required some finessing from a mallet or pry bar to fit in the groove. Not every cut was perfect, and no 2x4 was perfectly straight. The kids were actually a really big help during this part. They held down the natural curve in the plywood, making it much easier to screw in. For spacing between the shelves, we looked into what we wanted to store and then figured out how much space between shelves we needed for each type of item. We went 16 inches off the floor for our first shelf. This allows us to slide an 18-gallon tub in beneath it. Our second shelf has 13 inches of clearance, allowing cereal boxes and other taller items to be stored here. Shelves 2 through 4 have 9 inches of spacing, giving plenty of room for canned goods and mason jars. One of the things that we did to help us figure our spacing was to look at our kitchen cabinets and old pantry shelving to see what needed more room and where we thought we were wasting room. As far as the sheeting for each shelf, the lower 4 shelves use 1/2-inch grade B plywood that I had left over from a previous project. The last shelf is 1/2-inch C grade plywood. You could use either 1/2-inch plywood or 1/2-inch or 7/16 OSB for your shelves. The total material list for the project was 13 2x4x8s, 6 2x3x8s, 2.5 sheets of 1/2-inch plywood, 1.25 and 3-inch screws, 3.5-inch power legs, and 4-inch carriage bolts. And here's the finished project. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like and subscribe. See you next time.